Clara sat quietly in the passenger seat of the car while Daniel drove through the dark, rainy streets toward the hospital. Her hands rested gently on her swollen belly as she tried to control her breathing. Every few minutes, a sharp pain rushed through her body, reminding her that the baby was coming soon. Daniel kept both hands tight on the steering wheel, his eyes focused on the road, but his silence made Clara feel uneasy. She wanted him to say something comforting, something that would calm her fear, but he only nodded whenever she looked at him. When they finally reached the hospital, nurses quickly helped Clara into a wheelchair and rushed her inside. The bright lights of the hospital hallway felt cold and overwhelming. Doctors and nurses spoke in calm but fast voices, preparing everything for the delivery. Daniel followed behind, looking nervous and confused. Clara reached for his hand, and for a moment, he held it, but his grip felt weak and unsure. Hours passed in the delivery room. Clara screamed and cried as she fought through the pain. Sweat covered her face, and her hair stuck to her forehead. She felt scared but also excited because she believed this moment would bring her family closer together. She kept thinking about how Daniel had promised to be a loving father. She imagined him holding their baby with pride and happiness. Finally, after long and painful hours, the sound of a newborn baby crying filled the room. The nurse smiled warmly and gently wrapped the baby in a soft blanket. Clara's eyes filled with tears of relief and joy. She felt her heart overflow with love the moment she saw her child. The nurse carefully placed the tiny baby in her arms. Clara looked down and saw a beautiful baby girl with soft cheeks and small fingers moving slowly in the air. She whispered softly, telling her baby how much she loved her. Clara then looked up at Daniel, waiting to see his reaction. At first, he stood still near the door. His face looked pale, and his eyes stared at the baby without emotion. Clara smiled at him, hoping he would walk closer and share the moment with her. Instead, he looked uncomfortable, almost frightened. He took a slow step back, then another. The nurse noticed his strange behavior but stayed silent. Clara softly asked Daniel if he wanted to hold the baby. He hesitated. His lips moved like he wanted to speak, but no words came out. After a few seconds, he finally walked closer and looked at the baby girl. He stared at her for less than a minute. Clara expected him to smile or show excitement, but his expression remained cold and distant. His eyes moved quickly between Clara and the baby, as if he was trying to escape from something inside his own mind. Suddenly, Daniel cleared his throat and said he needed some fresh air. His voice sounded dry and nervous. Clara felt confused because he did not sound happy or emotional. She tried to ask if everything was okay, but before she could finish her sentence, he turned around and walked toward the door. Clara watched him leave the room, thinking he would return after a few minutes. The nurses continued checking Clara and the baby. They congratulated her and helped her feel comfortable. Clara tried to focus on her daughter, but her eyes kept moving toward the door. 10 minutes passed. Then 30 minutes. Daniel did not come back. Clara started feeling a strange fear growing inside her chest. She told herself he was probably nervous and just needed time. After an hour passed, Clara asked a nurse if she had seen Daniel in the hallway. The nurse gently shook her head. Clara tried calling his phone, but he did not answer. She called again and again, but each call went unanswered. Her hands started shaking. She felt a cold emptiness spreading through her body, replacing the happiness she had felt moments earlier. The rain outside the hospital window slowed down, and the night became quiet. Clara held her baby closer, listening to the soft breathing of her daughter. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the storm forming in her mother's heart. Clara forced herself to stay strong because she did not want her baby to feel her fear. As morning approached, Clara finally understood the painful truth. Daniel was not coming back. Tears rolled down her face, but she tried to stay silent so she would not wake her baby. Her dreams of raising a child with the man she loved began to break apart. She felt abandoned, confused, and deeply hurt, but when her baby moved slightly in her arms, Clara felt a new kind of strength rising inside her. She gently kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered that everything would be okay. Even though her heart was broken, she made a quiet promise to herself and to her child. She promised that no matter how difficult life became, she would protect her daughter and give her all the love she deserved. That night, inside the quiet hospital room, Clara realized her life had changed forever, and she would have to face the future alone, but she also discovered a new reason to be strong. The hospital room felt quieter the next morning, but the silence carried a heavy weight that Clara could not ignore. Sunlight slowly entered through the window, bringing warmth to the white walls, yet Clara felt colder than ever. She barely slept during the night. Every small sound from the hallway made her look toward the door, hoping Daniel would walk back in with an apology or an explanation. But the door remained closed, and the empty chair beside her bed reminded her that she was truly alone. Her newborn daughter stirred gently in the small hospital crib. The baby's tiny hands moved as if she were reaching for comfort. Clara quickly wiped her tears and leaned forward, carefully lifting her daughter into her arms. As she held the fragile little body close to her chest, she felt a strange mixture of pain and love. The baby opened her eyes for a moment, and Clara noticed how peaceful and innocent she looked. That innocent face made Clara realize that she could not allow her sadness to control her anymore. She picked up her phone again and tried calling Daniel for the 10th time. This time, the call went straight to voicemail. Her heart sank deeper as she listened to his recorded voice message. It sounded normal, cheerful even, which made the situation feel more painful. Clara ended the call without leaving a message. She knew deep inside that he was avoiding her, but she still struggled to accept it. Later that morning, a kind nurse entered the room to check on Clara and the baby. The nurse noticed Clara's swollen eyes and tired expression. She gently asked if everything was all right. Clara tried to smile, but her voice trembled as she explained that her partner had stepped out and never returned. The nurse listened quietly, her face filled with sympathy. She offered Clara words of comfort and assured her that she was not alone, even if it felt that way. Clara's mother arrived at the hospital shortly after receiving Clara's late-night message. The moment she walked into the room, Clara broke down in tears. Her mother rushed to her side and hugged her tightly. She did not ask many questions at first. She simply held her daughter and whispered that she would help her through this difficult time. That hug gave Clara a small sense of safety, something she desperately needed. Together, they talked about the future. Clara admitted her fears about raising a child alone. She worried about money, about emotional support, and about whether she could be both a mother and a provider. Her mother listened patiently and reminded her that she had always been strong and responsible. She promised to stand beside her and help raise the baby. Those words did not erase Clara's pain, but they gave her hope. Later that afternoon, Clara began thinking about a name for her daughter. She wanted a name that carried meaning and strength. After several quiet moments of thought, she chose the name Lily. To Clara, the name represented beauty, purity, and the ability to grow even in difficult conditions. She softly whispered the name to her baby, repeating it until it felt natural and comforting. As the hospital staff prepared Clara for discharge, reality started to feel more serious. She packed her small bag while her mother carefully held Lily. Every step Clara took felt heavier because she knew she was walking into a completely different life than the one she had imagined. She remembered how she and Daniel had once talked about decorating a nursery together and planning their future as parents. Those memories now felt distant, like dreams that had disappeared overnight. When Clara finally stepped outside the hospital, the air felt fresh but unfamiliar. She looked down at Lily, who slept peacefully in her blanket, unaware of the struggles waiting ahead. Clara felt fear rising inside her again, but she also felt something new, determination. She realized that her daughter depended completely on her, and she could not afford to fall apart. During the drive to her mother's house, Clara stared out the window, watching people continue their daily lives. She wondered how many others were carrying hidden pain while still moving forward. She held Lily closer and whispered promises of love, safety, and protection. She promised that Lily would grow up surrounded by care, even if her family looked different from others. That evening, as Clara placed Lily into a small borrowed crib beside her bed, she sat quietly and watched her daughter sleep. The room was simple and unfamiliar, but it was filled with quiet determination. Clara realized that Daniel's absence would always leave a scar, but she also understood that her story was not ending, it was only beginning. Life changed quickly for Clara after she returned home with baby Lily. The first few weeks felt like she was living inside a long, exhausting day that never ended. Lily cried often during the night, waking up every few hours. Clara barely slept. She spent her nights feeding the baby, changing diapers, and walking slowly around the small bedroom, hoping to calm Lily's cries. Sometimes she felt so tired that her eyes burned, but whenever she looked at her daughter's tiny face, she found the strength to keep going. Money soon became a serious problem. Clara had taken maternity leave from her small office job, but she knew she could not stay away from work for long. Hospital bills, baby clothes, milk, and daily expenses started to pile up. She often sat late at night with a notebook, writing down her expenses and trying to plan how she would manage everything. The numbers made her anxious because her income was not enough to cover everything comfortably. Clara decided to start working from home while taking care of Lily. She contacted her employer and requested part-time remote work. Luckily, they allowed her to handle small administrative tasks from home. It was not much money, but it was enough to help her survive. Clara would place Lily in a small baby chair beside her desk while she worked on her laptop. Many times, Lily would start crying during an important call or task, forcing Clara to stop working. These moments made her feel stressed, but she refused to give up. Besides financial struggles, Clara also faced social pressure. Some relatives and neighbors whispered about her situation. They asked uncomfortable questions about Lily's father and why he never visited. Clara tried to stay calm, but those conversations hurt deeply. She often smiled politely and changed the topic, hiding her pain behind quiet strength. Inside, she sometimes wondered if people saw her as weak or irresponsible, but she reminded herself that she was doing everything possible for her daughter. There were days when Clara felt extremely lonely. She missed having someone to share her worries with, someone who would hold Lily while she rested. Her friends slowly stopped visiting because they were busy with their own lives. Clara spent most of her time inside the house, taking care of Lily and completing her work. The quietness of the house sometimes made her thoughts louder, reminding her of Daniel and the life she once imagined. One evening, after Lily had been crying for hours, Clara sat on the floor holding her daughter and began crying too. She felt overwhelmed and scared that she might fail as a mother. But as she gently rocked Lily, the baby slowly calmed down and looked up at Clara with wide, curious eyes. That moment changed something inside her. Clara realized that Lily trusted her completely. That trust gave Clara new confidence and reminded her that she was stronger than she believed. As months passed, Clara slowly created a daily routine. She learned how to balance work, house chores, and baby care. She became faster and more organized. She discovered simple ways to save money, such as cooking meals at home and buying second-hand baby items. Every small success made her feel proud. Lily also grew quickly. She started smiling more, laughing when Clara made funny faces, and trying to speak her first small words. Those joyful moments became Clara's biggest reward. Whenever she felt tired or hopeless, Lily's laughter filled the house with happiness and reminded Clara why she kept fighting. Clara also started building emotional strength. She stopped checking her phone for messages from Daniel. She realized that waiting for him was only causing her more pain. Instead, she focused on creating a safe and loving environment for Lily. She began reading parenting books, watching educational videos, and learning how to raise a child confidently. Slowly, she started believing in her own abilities. Her relationship with her mother also became stronger. Clara's mother helped with babysitting whenever Clara needed rest or extra working hours. They often shared conversations late at night, talking about life, challenges, and hopes for Lily's future. These talks gave Clara emotional support and reminded her that she was not completely alone. Although life remained difficult, Clara noticed that she was changing. The scared and heartbroken woman who left the hospital months ago was slowly becoming determined and independent. She learned how to solve problems, manage stress, and stay emotionally strong. Every challenge she faced helped her grow into a stronger person. One night, while watching Lily sleep peacefully in her crib, Clara felt a deep sense of pride. She realized that despite all the struggles, she had kept her promise to protect and care for her daughter. She gently touched Lily's tiny hand and smiled, knowing that their journey was far from easy, but it was filled with love, courage, and hope for a better future. As the years passed, Clara's life slowly began to take shape, not the life she had imagined with Daniel, but one she had built entirely on her own strength. Lily was growing quickly, her small steps turning into running, her soft babbles developing into full sentences, and her curious eyes soaking in the world around her. Clara watched her daughter with a mix of awe and responsibility. Every milestone Lily reached was a reminder of how much they had already overcome together. Raising a child alone was no small feat, but Clara was learning that determination and love could move mountains. Clara began thinking about her future more seriously. She had survived the early struggles, managed bills, and learned to juggle work and motherhood, but she wanted something more stable, a career that would allow her to provide better for Lily and secure their future. Inspired by her love for children and her desire to help others, Clara decided to pursue a small course in child development and therapy. The decision was not easy. Classes required time, attention, and money, all of which were scarce, but Clara was determined. Late at night, after putting Lily to bed, she would sit at the kitchen table surrounded by books, notes, and a small desk lamp, absorbing everything she could about early childhood care and therapy techniques. During the day, she continued working remotely and caring for Lily, who had grown into a lively, observant little girl. Lily loved asking questions about everything, from why birds sang to why the clouds changed shape. Clara would answer with patience, trying to encourage curiosity and learning. Sometimes, Lily would draw pictures of their small apartment or the imaginary adventures she imagined with her friends. Those little drawings became a symbol of hope for Clara, a reminder that even in difficult circumstances, joy and creativity could thrive. Months turned into years, and Clara's efforts slowly started to pay off. She managed to save enough money to open a small pediatric therapy center in her neighborhood. The center was modest but welcoming, with bright colors on the walls, soft mats for children to sit on, and shelves filled with educational toys. It became a place where parents could bring children with developmental challenges for support and guidance. Clara poured her heart into the work, treating every child who walked through the door as if they were her own. Her compassion, patience, and dedication soon earned her a reputation in the community as someone who genuinely cared. Lily loved spending time at the center. She would often help her mother greet the children and bring them toys. Clara encouraged her daughter to be kind, thoughtful, and curious about the world. Watching Lily interact with the children brought Clara immense pride. She knew that despite everything they had endured, Lily was growing up into a strong, empathetic, and joyful child. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They had built a life together, one shaped not by loss or abandonment, but by perseverance, love, and courage. Clara also began to rebuild her own confidence. She learned to trust her instincts as a mother and a professional. Decisions about the center, the children, and Lily's upbringing became easier as she recognized her own strength and capability. Clara understood that while Daniel's absence had caused pain, it had also forced her to discover a resilience she might never have realized otherwise. Social life slowly returned to Clara's world. She made friends with other parents and colleagues, forming a support network she could rely on. These relationships became a source of joy, laughter, and occasional advice. Clara realized that family wasn't only defined by who was present at the birth of her child. Family could be built through trust, love, and shared experiences. Despite the progress, Clara's life was not free of challenges. Managing the therapy center required constant effort, and there were days when she felt overwhelmed by the combination of work, parenting, and running a business. But every time she saw Lily's happy face or received a grateful smile from a parent whose child had improved under her care, Clara felt the energy to keep going. The hardships reminded her of what she had overcome and reinforced her belief that determination could shape the future. At night, Clara would sit by Lily's bed, watching her sleep peacefully. She thought about how far they had come, from a hospital room filled with uncertainty and heartbreak to a life full of purpose and hope. The bond between mother and daughter had grown unbreakable, forged through struggles, love, and shared victories. Clara knew that their journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, she felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of peace that came from knowing that no matter what the future held, they were ready to face it together. The small therapy center was no longer just a place of work, it was a symbol of triumph, a testament to Clara's resilience, and a safe space where children could grow, learn, and be nurtured. And as she watched Lily draw her latest masterpiece on the colorful floor mat, Clara realized that this was the life she had fought for, a life built from love, courage, and unwavering determination. 5 years had passed since that fateful night in the hospital, and Clara had almost convinced herself that Daniel was a ghost from a life she no longer lived. Lily had grown into a lively, curious little girl, full of energy and questions that kept Clara on her toes. The small pediatric therapy center had become their second home, a bright, welcoming space where children came to learn, play, and receive guidance. Clara had poured her heart into the work, and the neighborhood had come to admire her dedication. It was a life full of challenges, yes, but also full of love, laughter, and small victories that reminded her daily of her own strength. On an ordinary autumn afternoon, Clara was busy organizing therapy materials when the bell above the center's door jingled. She looked up to see a man standing hesitantly in the entrance, holding a folder and scanning the room nervously. There was something familiar about him, a posture, a glance, but Clara didn't let herself dwell on it. Many people walked in with questions about therapy services, and she was used to strangers. The man approached the reception desk slowly, his eyes flicking toward her, yet not meeting hers directly. He cleared his throat and asked about enrolling a family member for therapy. Clara answered politely, explaining the center's programs and the schedule. As she spoke, she noticed his gaze shift toward Lily, who was running around the center, laughing and drawing on a piece of construction paper. The moment his eyes fell on her daughter, everything changed. Clara watched carefully as the man froze mid-step, his body rigid, and a sharp intake of breath escaped him. Lily's face was unmistakably familiar to him, even though he didn't yet know who she was. The resemblance was undeniable, the same eyes, the same small curve of her smile, the same delicate features he had never thought he would see again. Clara's heart raced as she observed him. There was something in the way he looked at Lily, a mixture of shock, guilt, and disbelief. It was as if he had been struck by a sudden realization that shook him to the core. He muttered something under his breath, words Clara could not hear, and his hands trembled slightly. She wondered who he was and why he was reacting this way, but she didn't move to intervene. Something told her to watch quietly, to let this unfold naturally. Lily, oblivious to the tension, ran up to the man, holding her drawing out proudly. "Do you like it?" she asked with her innocent enthusiasm. The man's eyes softened for a moment, and he reached out slowly, almost afraid to touch her. Clara noticed the emotion in his eyes, something she hadn't seen in years. There was recognition, a flicker of something personal, something he hadn't anticipated. Then, from behind him, another figure entered, the kind of presence that commands attention without saying a word. A woman stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the man's shoulder. Her eyes were warm but serious, carrying the weight of years of concern and responsibility. She introduced herself softly, revealing that she had been searching for Clara and her daughter after learning the truth about what had happened years ago. The man remained frozen, unable to speak, as the pieces of the past collided with the present. Clara could see the guilt etched across his face, the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided her gaze. The mother's words hung in the air, full of apology and explanation. She told Clara about the years of regret, the family pressure, and the realization that her son had made a mistake he could never undo without facing the consequences. Clara finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. She asked who he was and what his connection was to Lily. The man's voice trembled as he tried to answer, but it was Lily who unknowingly brought the breakthrough. She held her drawing up, offering it to him again, and asked softly if he liked it. The innocence of her gesture cut through the tension, softening even the deepest walls of regret. The man looked down at Lily, finally seeing the daughter he had abandoned 5 years ago. For the first time, he spoke her name, his voice shaking and barely audible. Clara could feel the storm of emotions inside him, shock, fear, remorse, and a desire for forgiveness that might never fully come. But Lily's simple kindness, the way she offered him a piece of herself through her drawing, opened a door he hadn't known existed. As Clara watched this unfold, she realized that life had a strange way of forcing reckoning. Daniel's sudden appearance had disrupted their peaceful life, yet it also revealed the depth of the journey they had undertaken together. She had raised Lily alone, built a life of purpose and love, and faced every challenge head-on. Now, this unexpected encounter tested not just forgiveness but also the strength she had gained over the past 5 years. The room was filled with quiet tension, but also a strange sense of possibility. Clara could see that the man was petrified, not just of what he had done, but of what he might still lose. And in that moment, she understood that the past, no matter how painful, could not erase the resilience, love, and courage that defined her life and her daughter's. The tension in the therapy center was almost unbearable. Clara stood still behind the desk, her eyes fixed on the man who had just walked in, her mind racing with questions and memories she had long tried to push away. The air seemed thick with unspoken words, heavy with the weight of years of abandonment and unanswered questions. The man, Daniel, had frozen completely the moment he saw Lily, and Clara could see it, the way his shoulders tensed, the tremor in his hands, the disbelief etched across his face. Then came the woman behind him. She moved with quiet authority, a calmness that contrasted sharply with the chaos in Daniel's expression. She introduced herself gently, explaining that she was his mother, a woman who had been searching for Clara and her child for years. She spoke carefully, as if every word carried the potential to shatter or heal. She explained how she had learned the truth about what had happened at the hospital 5 years ago, how Daniel had left in fear and confusion, and how she had felt helpless watching the family fracture from afar. Daniel could barely speak. His lips moved, forming words that never came out. He looked between Clara and Lily, his eyes wide, searching for forgiveness, understanding, or perhaps just a lifeline. He had spent 5 years carrying the weight of his own guilt, imagining what Clara's life must have been like, yet nothing had prepared him for seeing Lily alive and thriving, holding her mother's hand confidently as if nothing had ever been missing. Lily, sensing the tension but too young to fully understand it, clutched her drawing and extended it toward Daniel. "Do you like it?" she asked innocently. Her small voice, filled with hope and curiosity, cut through the thick silence like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Daniel's eyes softened for a moment, and his hands shook as he reached out to take the drawing. The gesture, simple and innocent, seemed to anchor him to the present, forcing him to confront what he had avoided for half a decade. Clara stepped forward, keeping her voice calm but firm. "Who are you, really? Why are you here?" she asked, her tone carrying both curiosity and caution. Daniel's mother gently placed a hand on his shoulder, urging him to speak. He swallowed hard, trying to form the words he had rehearsed in his mind for years. I didn't know. I wasn't ready," he stammered. "I was scared. I made a mistake." His voice cracked, betraying the depth of his remorse. The mother continued, her voice soothing yet honest, explaining how she had tried to guide him, how she had hoped he would find the courage to face his responsibilities. She admitted that she could not undo the past but insisted that acknowledgement and accountability were the first steps toward making any amends. Clara listened quietly, absorbing every word. She realized that the story she had lived for 5 years, of heartbreak, struggle, and triumph, was colliding with a past she thought she had buried. Daniel's gaze remained fixed on Lily, who was now looking at him with curiosity, her small brows furrowed as if she could sense his confusion. For the first time, he saw not just the child he had abandoned but a person who had grown strong, happy, and resilient despite his absence. The reality of his failure struck him like a lightning bolt, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. He wanted to apologize, to explain, but words seemed both necessary and impossible. Clara's heart beat rapidly. She felt a mix of anger, sorrow, and something almost unrecognizable, curiosity about what he might say, how he would react, and whether this encounter could possibly have an ending that didn't leave them all wounded. She noticed the way he flinched at her voice, the subtle slump of his shoulders as if the weight of his guilt had physically burdened him. She realized, in a strange way, that seeing him struggle now gave her some measure of control. She had survived abandonment, she had raised Lily alone. Daniel's fear now was nothing compared to the courage it had taken her to rebuild their lives. The room remained heavy with silence, broken only by the soft hum of the center's air conditioning and Lily's quiet movements. Daniel's mother guided him gently, urging him to face what he had avoided. Slowly, haltingly, Daniel took a step forward, his eyes never leaving his daughter. Clara could see the conflict in his gaze, desperation battling shame, guilt clashing with a longing to connect. Finally, Lily offered another small smile, tilting her head as if silently asking if he would be part of her life. Daniel's eyes welled with tears, and for the first time in years, he spoke her name aloud, softly, reverently, almost afraid of the sound of it. Clara felt a surge of emotion, a mix of fear, anger, and a fragile hope. The past had returned in a way she could never have predicted, but it also carried the possibility of understanding, accountability, and even forgiveness. In that moment, Clara realized that the story of abandonment and pain was meeting the story of courage and resilience. Daniel was petrified, yes, but she could see that he had begun to confront what he had avoided for 5 years. And though she did not know what would come next, she understood one thing clearly: their lives had changed forever, and the next steps would determine whether the past would haunt them or teach them. Daniel's hands trembled as he struggled to form words, his voice cracking under the weight of guilt he had carried for 5 long years. Clara watched him carefully, her heart a storm of conflicting emotions, anger, hurt, curiosity, and a faint spark of hope. She had spent years imagining this moment, yet seeing it unfold was far more intense than she had anticipated. The man who had abandoned her and their daughter now stood frozen, paralyzed by the consequences of his own choices. I don't know where to start, Daniel finally whispered, his eyes darting between Clara and Lily. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. I left because I was scared. I didn't know how to handle it. I thought I was protecting myself. I never meant for this, for her, for you. His words tumbled out in a mixture of confession and apology, but they seemed inadequate, fragile, like paper against a storm. Clara felt a wave of anger rise inside her. Protect yourself, she asked quietly, her voice steady but sharp. Do you know what it feels like to be left alone, to raise a child while the person who promised to be there disappears without a word? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she refused to break. Do you know what I went through, every sleepless night, every hospital bill, every time I had to explain to Lily why her father wasn't there? Daniel flinched as if her words were physical blows. He tried to speak, but no sound came. He looked down at the floor, ashamed, unable to meet her gaze. His mother stepped closer, gently resting her hand on his shoulder, silently urging him to stay composed and listen. Clara realized that the mother was not excusing his actions, she was holding him accountable, guiding him toward the first step of redemption, acknowledgement. Lily, sensing the tension but not understanding its full depth, walked over and handed Daniel another one of her drawings. "I drew this for you," she said softly. Her innocent gesture carried no judgment, no expectation, only kindness. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he knelt to accept the paper. For the first time in years, he felt a connection he had long denied himself. He looked into Lily's wide, trusting eyes and saw a life he had almost missed completely. Clara felt something shift in the room. She realized that this confrontation was not only about the past, it was also about the future. Daniel's fear, his guilt, and his regret were all very real, but they were powerless unless they led to action. She wanted answers, yes, but she also wanted to see whether he was capable of change. Could he acknowledge the pain he caused and take responsibility? Could he show even a fraction of the courage she had displayed every day for the last 5 years? Daniel's voice finally returned, trembling but determined. I want to make this right. I can't change the past, but I want to try, if you'll let me. I want to be part of her life, even if it's just a little. I want to be a father, the way I should have been. His words hung in the air, heavy and sincere, carrying both hope and uncertainty. Clara's mind raced. She thought of the nights she cried alone, the milestones she had celebrated without him, the countless moments she had carried Lily on her own. Could she allow him back, even in a limited way? Could she trust that he wouldn't hurt them again? Yet, as she watched Lily smile and reach out to him, she felt something unexpected, a possibility that even broken people could learn, change, and grow if guided properly. She took a deep breath, keeping her voice calm but firm. Daniel, you have a lot to prove. You need to understand that forgiveness isn't automatic. It's earned. You left us when we needed you most. Every day I raised Lily without you was a test of my strength, and you can't erase that. Clara paused, letting her words sink in. But if you're serious about being part of her life, you will have to accept responsibility for your actions and respect the life we've built together. Only then will I consider giving you a chance. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. His mother squeezed his shoulder in silent support. He understood the weight of what Clara was saying. No excuses, no shortcuts, he had to face the consequences of his choices. Lily, unaware of the complexity of the adult world, offered another shy smile, tugging lightly at his sleeve. That small gesture reminded Clara why she had endured every hardship. Love, courage, and resilience were not always fair, but they were powerful, and they shaped the people we became. The confrontation did not resolve everything, but it opened the door for accountability, reflection, and perhaps reconciliation. Clara knew that moving forward would require caution, patience, and boundaries. Daniel had been petrified by the moment, but now he had a path to redemption, however uncertain. And Clara, having survived heartbreak, abandonment, and years of struggle, realized that her strength would guide not just her own life, but Lily's as well, as they navigated the complicated path ahead together. Would you like me to continue with Part 8, the final chapter, in the same 700-word detailed, emotionally gripping style? Start with Part 8, more unique and interesting 700 words. Clara sat quietly on the edge of the therapy center's small couch, her eyes following Lily as the little girl moved around, carefully placing her drawings on the colorful mats. The air was filled with a soft hum of activity, other children's laughter from the center mingling with the occasional squeak of a toy, but Clara felt a heavy stillness pressing around her. Daniel stood nearby, his posture rigid, unsure how to bridge the gap between the years lost and the fragile present. Clara knew that this moment would define the next chapter of their lives, and she had to proceed carefully, not just for herself, but for Lily. Lily approached Daniel with another small smile, holding out her favorite drawing of a star-filled night sky. "This is for you," she said softly, her voice innocent and full of hope. Daniel hesitated for a moment, then reached out to accept it. His fingers brushed hers, and for the first time, Clara saw him softened, almost human in the vulnerability he had long hidden. His eyes brimmed with tears, reflecting a mix of awe, guilt, and wonder as he looked at his daughter. He had spent 5 years imagining her, fearing her, regretting his absence, but now, here she was, alive and full of life. Clara took a deep breath and spoke, keeping her voice calm yet firm. "Daniel, I want to be clear about something. Being her father isn't something that comes automatically. You don't get a second chance just because you feel guilty. Lily has had a whole life without you. She has grown, learned, laughed, and survived. If you want to be part of her life, you have to respect her, respect me, and most importantly, prove that you are willing to take responsibility for your actions." Daniel nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I understand," he whispered. I can't undo the past. I can't change what I did, but I can try to be here for her now. I want to be the father I should have been, the one she deserves." His voice cracked as he said the words, and Clara could see the sincerity in his eyes. This was not a man seeking forgiveness for comfort, it was a man facing the reality of the consequences he had caused. For the first time in years, Clara allowed herself to take a small step forward. She guided Lily closer to Daniel and encouraged her to interact with him gently. Lily handed him another drawing, this one depicting their little family under a bright sun. "We're a family," she said simply, her words carrying the pure wisdom of a child untainted by bitterness. Daniel's eyes widened, and tears spilled down his face as he realized the depth of what he had missed. Clara watched silently, her heart both heavy and light. She understood that forgiveness would not come instantly, that trust would have to be earned slowly, but she also recognized that this moment was a beginning. The past could not be erased, but the future was a blank page waiting to be written. Daniel's willingness to face his mistakes, coupled with Lily's innocent openness, offered a fragile but real opportunity for reconciliation. The afternoon passed slowly. Clara observed Daniel engaging with Lily, helping her with a puzzle, laughing awkwardly at her jokes, and gently answering her endless questions. She noticed that he still faltered at times, unsure how to navigate this new role, yet there was a visible effort, a determination to do better. Clara realized that actions, more than words, would define whether he could truly be part of their lives. Later, as the therapy center quieted for the day, Clara and Daniel spoke alone. She set clear boundaries. Involvement in Lily's life would require consistency, honesty, and respect. There would be no shortcuts, no pretending the past didn't happen. Daniel agreed, understanding fully the gravity of her words. Clara knew that this was not a storybook reunion, it was a delicate negotiation, built on accountability and the slow rebuilding of trust. As they left the center together, Lily holding both their hands, Clara felt a mixture of relief and cautious hope. Life had thrown them unimaginable challenges, yet here they were, standing on the edge of a new beginning. She realized that the journey ahead would not be easy, Daniel had to prove himself, and she had to remain vigilant, but the possibility of healing and connection was real. That night, Clara tucked Lily into bed and watched her sleep peacefully. The room was quiet except for the soft rhythm of the little girl's breathing. Clara reflected on the journey, from the hospital room filled with fear and abandonment, through years of struggle, to this moment where courage, love, and resilience had brought them to a crossroads. She understood that life would continue to test them, but she also knew that together, they had the strength to face whatever came next. Clara kissed Lily's forehead and whispered a promise, "No matter what happens, we will face it together. You are safe, loved, and stronger than you know." And as she turned off the light and closed the door, she felt a deep sense of quiet triumph. The past had shaped them, the present had tested them, and the future, though uncertain, was theirs to shape, full of hope, love, and second chances.